Could everybody please have their cameras off and be on mute? Thank you very much. Hello, good morning everybody, and welcome to the January meeting of Schools Forum. I hope you've all had a very good start to the new term, so welcome to the meeting. Just a couple of points before we get going. If you could keep your cameras off and be on mute unless you're presenting a paper or if you are making a point or asking a question. And if you would like to ask a question, if you could use the raise your hand function to let me know that you would like to do so, or if that's not working on your computer, if you could put a message in the chat. And then when you're called to ask a question, if you could please just introduce yourself and say which education setting you're from. That will help new people on the call to know who everybody is. Thank you very much. So moving on to apologies for today, we've had apologies from Anna Mears. Her substitute Helen Murray is attending. We've also had apologies from Mark Chapman, Hayley Griffin, Sonia Harben and James Clark. Since the last meeting, there has been a request for new nominations for the 2 vacancies for Academy representatives. And the 2 new mainstream Academy reps are myself as Chair of Governors for the Federation of Fairfield Infants and Colneys Junior Schools that are now part of Echo Trust, and also Mark Chapman, who is Trustee and Chair of Governors for Kingfisher Schools Trust and Evolution Academies Trust. So they are the new Academy reps for you on Schools Forum. Moving on now to paper A, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 20th of November. And thank you very much again to Robert for chairing that meeting. If we could take them for accuracy and matters arising page by page, please. So page 1 and 2, 3, 4 and 5. I don't see any raised hands or any points made. Oh, I'm forgetting myself. I didn't let you know who is on the call today. I'll just run through that as well. There is Amanda Havers, Andrew Berry, Councillor Andrew Reid, Angela Ransby, Christina Lewis, Chris Lee, Crystal Buck, Colin Shaw, Daniel Jones, Emma Wilson Downs, Gemma Morgan, Harriet Wakeling, Helen Murray, Jacqueline Dyer, Jennifer Smith, Julia Granger, Maria Kemble, Michael Quinton, Paul Fykin, Robert Lenko, Ruth Coleman, Sarah Jane Smedmore, Stephen Dewing and Teresa Spilling. Thank you all very much for attending today. So now moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the term of office for the Chair and Vice Chair, paper B, and I'll hand over to Julia Granger for this paper. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. Julia Granger, Assistant Director for Education and Learning. So just to run through the outline of paper B, you'll note from the paper that there are 2 aspects to it. One is to vote on agreeing the continuation of the arrangements regarding the terms of office for the Chair and the Vice Chair of Schools Forum as 2 years. And then one is to vote for the role of the Chair and Vice Chair as the current members' terms have come to an end. just picking out a couple of points from that paper. So Schools Forum voted in January 2022 for a 2-year term of office for the role of chair and vice chair. And then in 2024 voted to continue for that 2-year period for the current chair and vice chair, Alison and Robert. The statutory guidance for Forum doesn't actually specify a term of office, and the 2-year vote, as I said, was agreed by Forum in 2022 and then again in 2024. So I'm just going to pause for time for any questions or comments, and if not, we will go into the vote. Firstly, for Schools to vote on continuing the arrangements regarding the terms of office as a 2-year term of office. But any questions or any comments before we open that vote?
I don't see any
hands up. Okay, so can we launch the vote?
I'll ask Jacqueline.
Please?
Yeah, Jacqueline, if you could launch that, please. So it should now be appearing on your screens, please. So to agree to 2-year office for the chair and vice chair, please either vote yes or no and submit. Thank you. Yes, it looks like everybody's now voted, and everyone has voted in favour of that. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you. Okay, so vote passed for the 2-year terms of office. And now if we go on to the second item, which is voting for the role of chair and then the role of vice chair. So we've had a nomination from Alison Coleman to continue in the role as chair. If we can open the vote for that too. Thank you, Jackie. And if people can vote there. Thank you. Okay.
Well, it looks like everybody's in favour of me continuing,
so
Julia.
Vote closed. Alison, thank you, and that's good news. And so, Alison, I'll hand over to you to continue for the voting for the vice chair role.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you very much, everybody. I will endeavour to do as good a job as I can to keep the meetings running smoothly. Thank you. Although I haven't made a very good job at the start of this meeting this morning, but I'll screw my head back on. So moving on to the vote for vice chair, we have had a nomination from Robert Lenko. So please, Jacqueline, could you launch the vote as that was the only nomination, please? So if you could all vote now, please. Thank you. And everyone is in favour, Robert, of you continuing as vice chair, and I completely endorse that, because whenever you need to stand in for me, I know you've done an excellent job. So thank you very much for being willing to continue in that role, Robert. So thank you all very much.
Thank you, Alison. I'm happy to do it.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Just a reminder, I'm just double checking that everyone has remembered that if you are here as a local authority member or an academy member, that you are eligible to vote. You're also eligible to vote if you are here as a substitute, but not if your main rep is also here, and you're not eligible to vote if you're an observer. So just a reminder for the rest of the votes for today on that basis, in case anybody's come in late. Thank you very much. So if we can now move on to our next item, which is paper C, the early years funding formula. And if I could please hand over to Christina Lewis for this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. Good morning, everybody. Unbelievably, it's that time of year again when I'm bringing the paper, setting out what we hope to be the rates for the next financial year. As always, I have consulted with the Early Years Consultative Forum, and they are in favour of what I'm bringing today. You will see the main changes are that we are once again able to slightly increase the funding rates. Whilst that is welcome, we still remain one of the 40th lowest funded local authorities, and our rates remain below the averages that the DfE publish, which is always quite tricky to manage. And just to bring your attention that later this spring, there's going to be a consultation from the DfE about how they actually determine the funding rates. So I would encourage people to take part in that consultation, please, and have the voice of Suffolk heard. The other slight change that I'll bring your attention to as well is that this time there is a contingency amount that we've never had before. This is because the DfE are moving us from an annual census to a termly census, and they've recognised that that could impact adversely our cash flow, because the termly census will be taken early in the term, meaning we may not have money to pay for any late claims or make any adjustments or rectify any mistakes that providers make in their claims. So there is a contingency so that we can meet those funding commitments. But as always, if there's any left by the end of the year, we will not retain it. We will disperse it to the sector as an additional payment. So whatever way, providers will get that money. And the only other thing I wanted to say is that once again, we are proposing that the local authority will reduce the amount that we retain. We do retain some to enable us to meet our statutory duties around early years and childcare, but we are entitled to keep up to 3%, and this year we will be reducing from 2.75 that it is currently to 2.5%. We're able to do that, quite honestly, because of the sterling work all our providers have done in maximising take-up of the funded entitlements. So we have such high take-up that we don't need to keep such a high percentage. So on that basis, can I ask that either I can take questions now, or if there are none, we can go to the vote, please.
Indeed. Has anybody got any points they'd like to raise or any questions for Christina before we go to the vote, please? I can't see that anybody has put hands up at the moment. I'll give everybody a few moments to decide if they want to ask anything, but no, it was a very clear paper, Christina, so I think you've given everybody the information that we need. Okay then, so Jacqueline, could you launch the vote, please? So vote for to agree the funding rates for early education entitlements for 26-27. Could you please vote if you're a voting member, whether you agree or not to that, please? Thank you very much. And everybody has voted in favour of that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Just so you're informed, that enables me to publish the rates tomorrow, which will give our providers a chance to prepare for the coming financial year. So I do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, Christina. Thank you for attending today. So we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is paper D. This is the schools block funding for 26-27. I'll hand over to Mike for this paper. Thank you. Morning, Mike.
Morning, Alison. Morning, everybody. I'm Michael Quinton. I am the Senior Accountant supporting CYP and schools. And today we have an update on the National Funding Formula for 26-27. And we have 3 decisions as well that we're asking Schools Forum to agree. So what we're asking Schools Forum to agree today is to continue to follow the National Funding Formula, which we have done for the past 8 years. Using the prescribed DfE schools block unit values. We are asking Forum to agree that we include rent as an exceptional factor to support those few schools that qualify for that, and this means that we don't penalise those schools that have to pay sort of historic and unreasonable rents to village halls and to use fields and things like that. So again, we've agreed that over the past 10 years. So hopefully, again, you'd agree that we continue to use that. And also we're asking Schools Forum to agree to reduce the central growth funding pot that we have by £600,000. And that's because we've got, as we know, we've got falling roles in our reception intake, and the actual growth allocation that we received from the DfE this year also reduced by over £300,000. So we think that's a sensible decision to make. So those are the 3 decisions that we're asking Forum to agree today. But what I'll do, I'll just highlight a few areas of the report that I think are just worthwhile going through. So within the tables 1 and tables 2, this just shows the amount that we have within Suffolk for our total DSG. So overall, for the blocks of funding that we've got for the schools block, central services, high needs and early years, we've got £809 million to distribute. And you can see that broken down into the various blocks in table 1. And then within table 2, I just thought it would be worthwhile highlighting the increases that we're seeing year on year. And as we know, the increases that we get within Suffolk and in general are not keeping pace with inflation. So the high level numbers, or what you may have seen out in the press, is that there's a 4.2% increase in our schools block funding. But if you take out the grants that we've received this year, the school support budget grant and the national insurance contribution grant, which works out just over £17 million, then the actual increase, the real increase that our schools are seeing is only 1.2%, which, as we know, that's way below inflation again. I think the rate of inflation was seen at 3.4% yesterday. So we're 2.2% below the current rate of inflation. On top of that, with teacher pay increases and support increases, we just know how difficult it is for our schools. And as I say, at most schools forums, as we know, Councillor Andrew Reid is part of the F40 group, and we continue to do all that we can to get our point across and to show how poorly funded we are in Suffolk and for our schools, including the high needs block as well. So we continue to do that. I just thought I'd touch on the high needs block, and I know Chris and Gemma are here just to talk about that in the next paper. But currently, as we stand, we haven't seen any increase in our high needs block funding for next year, and that's because of the delay to the white paper. I had a meeting last week and we called it the mythical white paper because it just keeps getting delayed and delayed. But we have been told that will be with us in February. So we sort of hold our breath, cross fingers and everything like that we do see something from the government on that. But as you can see, for the high needs block, with the grants rolled in again, it looks like we've had quite a decent increase, but it's just the grants going in which has given us that 7.4% increase. We've actually had no new money in the high needs block. And I think I just highlighted in the paper that we think that there'll be some more information in the white paper around SEND reforms and what that looks like and what the new methodology of funding is for high needs. So we wait with bated breath to see what that looks like. And I know Gemma and Chris and the executive directorate leadership team within CYP are sort of keen to see when that comes in and what it looks like, and we can start to move forward on that. So if I just take you down to point, where are we going to? So point 9 in the paper, again, it's just worthwhile pointing this out, is that Suffolk, we've had a reduction of over 1,000 pupils, so coming into our schools, and that's mainly in reception. So the reception intake is falling, and it has been for the last couple of years now. So what that means is that we actually lose funding coming into Suffolk because we've got less numbers in our schools. So that does equate to again another £6.6 million that we haven't got that we did have last year. So again, just further pressures that we're seeing within the system, especially at primary phase at the moment. A lack of bums on seats, so to speak, unfortunately does mean a lack of funding coming in as well. If we just move down to the exceptional factor for rent, so again, this is something we're asking Forum to agree today, and we do each year. So this is just where we support those schools that have got historical rent factors. So, for example, we've got a school that sits on a military base, and they have to pay the Ministry of Defence to use the building and the associated grounds. We have lots of small rural schools that have to pay rent to local councils, for example, to use village halls for PE, for assemblies, for dinner, things like that. And again, this is something that is only probably specific to sort of larger rural authorities. It's not something that obviously we see within sort of bigger built up urban areas. But again, it's only about £115,000 that we look to divert from the formula to help support these few schools. So for this year, I think there's 7 schools that qualify for this rent factor. So again, we just think it's very important that those schools are not unfairly penalised for these historical rent agreements. Growth and falling roles. So as I mentioned, we have falling roles within our primary phase. at the moment. The reception intake is down, and that means that the growth factor that we get from the DfE has also reduced in the last number of years. So I think if you go back to sort of 1920, we were getting nearly £3 million in that growth factor, because there was still an element of growth being seen in the system. But as you can see in the paper, we've reduced from 1.9 million for 25-26, and that's dropped down to 1.584 million for 26-27. So I think with the sort of the lack of growth cases that we're seeing in primary schools, we think it's prudent that we drop that central growth pot that we've got, which is currently sitting at 1.8 million, to about 1.28 million. That means that we've got enough funding there to cover the current growth cases that we've got in some of our schools. Some of our schools are still growing because of housing in certain areas. And we also have, we've got a new school opening in September 27, and we've got 2 new schools opening again in 2028. So as part of that growth pot, we also support schools with startup funding, diseconomies of scale funding and things like that in order to get schools up and running before they open. So the 1.28 million we think is prudent for 26-27, and again we can come back next year if we think we need to amend that growth funding for 27-28. I thought I'd just add a little bit in here about notional SEN, although it's highly likely that the funding for SEN within mainstream settings will change as a result of the white paper. But I thought it was just useful to know that the amount that we do allocate to this notional budget, and when we say notional, it just means it gives schools a guide on what they should be distributing to pupils with additional needs in their settings. I think we allocate 11.4% of our total schools block funding to this pot of money, and nationally that average is at 12.1%, so we're not too far behind the average. I was looking at other local authorities, and I know that some are sort of sitting below 10%, and I know Norfolk, for example, are looking to up their notional SEN funding to get nearer to the national average. So I think where we sit currently with that pot of money, that seems fine to us within the local authority. And then the last thing, I think it's always useful just to include at this early stage. So in Annex A, it just shows the draft pro forma that needs to be submitted to the DfE today, but it just gives yourselves, and you can share this with colleagues, it gives you that early sort of insight, if you like, to what those formula factor unit values are, so you can start to go away and do some sort of early planning. I'm hoping that because I'm submitting everything today and I'm in dialogue with the DfE around this, that there shouldn't be too many changes to anything at all. So I'm fairly confident those unit values in there. And when I'm talking about the unit values, I'm talking about the ARPU, because that is the sort of the adjusting number that we use to ensure that the schools block is affordable, and we're not giving out more than what we're getting in from the DfE. But as I said, I think I'm quite confident that what's in there will be what we publish to our LA maintained schools, hopefully on the 13th of February, and then the DfE will be releasing the funding to academies before the 28th of February. So I think that's everything I just wanted to sort of highlight on the paper. Happy to take any questions if anyone has anything, and if not, then Alison, you can go to the votes.
Thank you, Mike. That's really helpful overview of the paper. Yes, Robert, you've got your hand up. Come to you. Thank you. You're on mute, Robert.
There you are. I'm not used to it. Yes. Morning, Mike. First of all, fantastic job. Thank you very much. It's a lot to see. Gordon Jones, I don't think he's here, but he would certainly raise the issue of these figures, which are truly scary for the projections, particularly on SEND. But as you say, we can't really do anything until the Department of FE comes up with something. Just out of interest, on the falling roles in Section 9, is it mostly primaries in rural locations rather than around towns and where it's built up? Because thinking of Thurston with the thousands and thousands of houses, I can't believe the primary sector is shrinking.
Not necessarily, Robert. I think there is so even in Ipswich, for example, we know of a few schools that are looking to reduce their PAN. So I think it's it does impact on rural settings more so, I would say, just because of economies of scale and the size of those schools. But no, it's a sector-wide issue, nationally as well. So it's not just a Suffolk thing, but nationally pupil numbers are falling. So and I think on an annual basis we will come back to Forum with an update on sort of school place planning and in infrastructure. So that's something that I think we'll look to do maybe at the next Forum meeting or the one in the summer.
Okay, thanks very much, Mike.
Stephen, I'll come to you next. Thank you.
Thank you. The operational guide says Schools Forum has to approve the criteria on growth and falling roles fund as well. I note the current guidance refers to Ofsted good and outstanding ratings, but those no longer exist. So the guidance needs rewriting. Is there a plan on how that will be reflected?
So I think that went last. I think that paper went last autumn. I think, and I'm. If the policy on Suffolk Learning does it still include that? I know that we have updated that to remove the Ofsted ratings. So we'll just double check that, Stephen. But I think we did agree the growth funding or the growth policy on how we distribute that funding last year. But as I say, I can come back to you on that, Stephen, and I can check what we've got on Suffolk Learning. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just gone there. It currently does. So yeah, okay. If it just needs updating, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Stephen.
Stephen, you didn't introduce yourself when you first came on. Could you just?
Really sorry, Stephen Dewing, CFO for Safiento Education Trust, Academy Rep.
Thank you, Stephen. Julia, I'll come to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just sharing for information, Michael referred to the F40 group, and we are active members of that group and attended a meeting on Monday, actually, where members of the group were sharing the different tasks and activities that we're undertaking across all our areas to lobby for fairer funding for children and young people. And in fact, members of the group were going on to a cross-party event with MPs in Westminster that they were hosting. So we'll keep this group updated on the work of F40 as well. Thank you,
Julia. That's helpful. I was just reflecting when I was reading the paper, when I saw that Mike had included that we moved towards aligning with the national funding formula 8 years ago. And I remember the conversation at Forum then that we assumed that within a year or two that the DFE would be distributing funding based on the national funding formula across the whole country and would have used it as an opportunity to level up funding discrepancies between local authorities. How optimistic we were back then, and as you can see, we're all still here and the national funding formula still hasn't levelled out the anomalies, shall we put it, in the funding formula, which is a great pity. We can but hope.
Yeah, I think I mentioned last year on the paper, I think the majority of local authorities are getting there on the national funding formula. Obviously, the DFE says that local authorities should move to a threshold of plus or minus 10% of the national funding formula each year. But I think last year, we were about 130 local authorities were actually mirroring the national funding formula and using the schools block unit values. So I think we're getting there, but it's just so slow, and it's because of the historical way that the funding was set years and years ago that it's going to take Suffolk generations to get to a fair position, and that's one of the things that F40 are definitely pushing as well.
Thank you. Okay, if there's can't see any more hands up, I'll just check. I'm having to hop between the chat and hands up. No. Andrew, I'll come to you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, Alison, just to come in on the tail end of that conversation, just to say that we have been lobbying government via our MPs as well, and a couple of them are are on the ball with respect to education issues facing Suffolk. So we'll keep you in touch with that as well.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there's no more points or questions, then I'll ask Jacqueline to do the first of the 3 votes that we need to do. So if voting members can be poised, ready. So could people either agree or not to the approach for 26-27 using the national funding formula prescribed pupil-led unit values as previously agreed over the past 8 years? So voting members can now vote, please. Thank you very much. And everyone who has voted has agreed to that. Thank you. So Jacqueline, if we can now go to the second vote for this paper, please. So this is to approve the continuation of rent as an exceptional factor for the few schools in Suffolk that qualify. So voting members could either vote for or against that, please. So a few more votes to come in. And thank you. Everyone who has voted in favour of that. Thank you very much. So if we now go on to the third vote for this paper, please, Jacqueline. To agree the reduction of the Growth and Falling Roles Fund from 1.8 million, which was the 25-26 allocation, to 1.28 million for 26-27 due to reduced growth cases in schools. So if you can vote for or against that, please. A couple more votes to come in. Thank you very much. Thank you. And everyone has voted in favour of that as well. So that concludes the voting for this paper. So thank you on behalf of everyone here and schools around the county, Mike, for the work that you and your team do to put the budgets together. We know you've got your deadline today of getting this submission into the DFE, but then all the number crunching to get the school packs ready. I know you'll all be busy doing that. So thank you for that work too.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks all.
Thanks, everybody. Okay, so now we can move on the agenda to paper E, which is the SEND paper, and I'll hand over to Chris Lee for this. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Alison. Good morning, everyone. My name's Chris Lee. I'm the Interim Assistant Director for SEND and Inclusion in Suffolk. I'm here this morning to share an information item. It's not a decision-making item today for you, so just in relation to information. This, again, is a regular feature on an annual basis to update Schools Forum in relation to our high needs block and also our deficit management plan that results from our situation. I will just run through some brief highlights of this and assume that the paper is read and the deficit management plan, which is attached as an appendix to the paper, is also read, given that it is quite an extensive document. I won't take you through that page by page today. So in relation to this, again, without repeating everything that Mike's just gone through already as well.
Chris, could you just speak up a little bit, please, because people are struggling to hear you. Thank you.
Yes, certainly. Is that any better at all?
That sounds a little bit better, but yeah, just have your microphone a little bit closer would be helpful.
Yeah, of
Thank
course.
you.
No, that's fine. So in relation to this, again, looking at our high needs block spend, the accumulated deficit that we will have is looking to increase from what was 97 million to approximately 170 million by the end of March this year. And our current projections place that as reaching over 350 million by the end of 27-28 financial year. So as reflected in that previous conversation, we are seeing an increasing spend continuing. Paper talk through some of the causes around that in our current situation and the improvement work that we have been carrying out locally in terms of addressing our education, health and care plan backlogs, which for this financial year has led to an increased number of plans going through the system, which has accelerated the overspend for this particular year. We're anticipating those levels to drop back to more business as usual levels into this next financial year. So should see that acceleration not quite in the same way as it has been for this particular financial year. Position that we have is that for any local authority that has an overall deficit on its DSG account at the end of financial year, there is a requirement for us to produce a deficit management plan, and that's reflected for every local authority in that position across the country. This lets us then set out what those mitigation elements are that we intend to have in place to move forward from our situation. In relation to that funding, and just for people's awareness in that, the DSG deficits have previously and currently been temporarily kept off the council overall balance sheets since 2020. The more recent announcement was that in March 2028 they would be reintegrated back onto the council balance sheets, and obviously that causes significant financial concern for all councils in that situation. The recent announcement, however, in the autumn budget statement was that from 2028, the government will take over full responsibility for the special educational needs spending from local councils. We haven't had the full detail of what that looks like as yet, and we're expecting that to come further down the line as to what format and shape that will take, and we will keep Forum and other relevant bodies informed as we move through that process as well. So moving through that side of things and pushing us on to the end of it, as I say, the deficit management plan in terms of its format, it typically looks through the analysis of our current financial position in detail, looking at the size of the deficit, reductions in surpluses and the factors that contribute. It shows our forecasts and assumptions and projected DSG income and expenditure over the next few years. And as Max said, we're still waiting for some of those figures to come through for our coming year as well. It puts in place our recovery strategies, shows our risk assessment as to how we will mitigate any potential risks that we see, and also the monitoring arrangements and how we continually report to the Department for Education so that they have that full oversight of where we go with this as well. Briefly, in terms of those mitigation strategies, just so that people are fully aware of it, we do have a SEND capital programme in place to look at increasing additional specialist places within our schools, within our local offer, which is aimed at reducing the reliance that we have on our costly independent placements and improving that local access to provision that we have. We're also focusing quite significantly on early intervention and inclusive practice to support our mainstream schools to have that capacity and confidence to include further children in their mainstream settings and then be able to attend school in their local communities. We have carried out over the past year the Delivering Better Value programme as well. And again, in relation to Schools Forum and the support that we receive, we have had that schools block contribution as well, and the continued transfer of the 0.5% from the schools block to support the deficit recovery. Contribution so far has been 14.4 million, which has been significantly appreciated in relation to that support. In terms of further developments, again, as Mike mentioned before as well, we are still awaiting the SEND white paper to come through. We're expecting that to set out a number of quite significant changes for us in terms of that national framework. It is obviously high profile and reported quite frequently within the press in terms of potential outcomes from that. And in preparation for that as well, we are in a current process of completing a local area maturity tool, which again is essentially a self-audit for us to be as ready as we can for when those actual reforms are published, and we can move as quickly as we can in response to what is expected from them as well. So just to finish off then, in terms of next steps and where we're going from here, we'll be submitting the deficit management plan as is in the appendix to the DFE for their ongoing monitoring and support from them in that respect. We will be undertaking a review of our high needs funding in the coming months as well to ensure that we have got that set up correctly. It's given us the most effectiveness and highest impact for our children and young people from the resources that we have available. And again, we'll be engaging with stakeholders and co-producing any elements that we move forward with on that side of things as well to ensure that full partnership cooperation. And again, as the paper says, final element on it then is our preparations for that white paper impact and the potential changes that it will bring through for us, so that when it is published, hopefully in February, as Mike says, that we're in a position to move very quickly with that as well. I'll pause there and happy to take any questions, Alison. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Chris. Does anybody have any questions or points? Robert.
Right, sorry, I'm trying to get my IT organised. I should have said before, my name's Robert Lenkamp, Vice Chair of Governors at Thurston Community College. Chris and Gemma, obviously, thank you very much for the paper, very detailed. Just a quick thing in item 5 about the numbers of EHCPs, because you say 30th November 25, they're 343, and that's quite considerably lower. I know there's a month to go from last year, where it was, you said 2,000. Does that mean it's peaked, or is that just an anomaly?
That references for us, Robert, that is in relation to our recovery element and the backlog that we had been experiencing for our EHC plan. So in the previous year, there had been difficulties being able to process those requests in the required timely manner, and a backlog had built up, which that backlog then resulted in that higher figure of 2,215 at March. The 343 that are over 20 weeks at that stage is as a result of the significant work that's gone in through the SEND service to bring that backlog down and get them back into line. In terms of the system as a whole and the requests that are coming in, we have experienced a slight, and I would say, I emphasise it as a slight reduction compared to previous year in that. However, we're very aware that the pending reforms may also cause a potential surge depending on what is published in them, and any resulting anxiety or prioritisation for families and schools to secure EHC plans before whatever changes may be implemented. So we are very much keeping a watching brief over that situation.
Great, thanks very much, Chris. Thank you.
Andrew, I'll come to you next. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And thanks for that question, Bob. And I think, Chris, is it possible to expand a little bit more about where we are around timeliness across the piece within the context of how many EHCPs we now have? Could you do that, please, for everyone?
Yeah, certainly, Councillor Reid, thank you for that. So in our current situation now, and the growth that we've experienced over time, we now have a system where we have over 11,000 EHC plans in our system in Suffolk, which is a substantial growth from 8,000 just a couple of years ago. Been quite a significant increase in that. That surge has also impacted on that backlog that we've experienced and have now worked our way through. I think it is important to note for this meeting that at that earlier stage, our timeliness and where we were against national averages was that we were significantly below national average and only completing single figure percentages within the statutory limit of 20 weeks to complete the EHC assessments. Thanks to that backlog recovery work and where we are now with things, we are now projecting that in this particular year, where we now have a caseload of currently 881 EHC assessments in the system, where we are at the moment, the 83.9% of them are now operating within 20 weeks. Even take that back to just September where we were previously, and that was less than 50% of those assessments were within 20 weeks. So there's been significant improvement in a very short space of time. We are very much projecting that by the end of this financial year, end of March, that we will be back above the national average for timeliness, which from the previous year was 46% of EHC assessments being within that 20-week period. By the end of March, we're projecting to be back above that and intending to move into much significantly higher percentages of at least 80% in the coming months through to the halfway point of the year, thanks to the work that the service has put in.
Thanks for that update, Chris. That's helpful. Does anybody else have any questions or points on SEND? Is a topic we talk about at every meeting, inevitably. There's a very important topic to us. There's no further questions. Look like they're coming up. So one more, or a point probably from Sarah Jane. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. It is a point. So just to promote our Belonging and Inclusion Conference, which is happening next Friday at Trinity Park, opportunity to come alongside education and setting leaders to really think about how we as a system are going to continue to work together, to think about some of the things that we've been considering today and making sure that our children are in the right places with the right support at the right time. So as Chris has talked to you about, we have gripped the system within the local authority. We're making huge strides around quality and sufficiency. So things are definitely changing. So I think we've got 180 delegates next week, Julia. I think we're and Chris, we're at that point. It should be a really successful day. So just really welcoming that opportunity. 200. There we go. Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Alison.
Excellent. Well, I hope it is a day that helps to galvanise the system. We've always been good in Suffolk at trying to work together, but there's always room for improvement, isn't there? And other things that can happen. So I wish you well for that day and the other work that you're leading in the team now, Chris. So welcome to this meeting, and I hope you find us a helpful and supportive environment for you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next item on the agenda is AOB. There's just one thing I would like to mention today. We don't usually have any AOB, but since the last meeting, Robert mentioned Gordon a little while ago. Well, since the last meeting, Gordon Jones has stepped down from his role on Schools Forum, and given Gordon's many years of work in education, both in his time as a county councillor, that included being the lead for children's education and children's services as part of that role for a while, and then his role as a governor and coming on to Schools Forum. Gordon was always has been extremely passionate about education and wanting the best for children in Suffolk, and I think it would just be appropriate just to acknowledge that in the minutes of our meeting today, now that he's stepped down from his role with us. So that's the AOB I have for today. So also moving on, the last item on the agenda is just to look at our forward agenda. We'll be meeting again on Thursday the 14th of May. At the moment, the agenda will include a STEM provision update, DSG outturn, which is always a verbal update because of the timing of the meeting and when documents have to be submitted to DFE, and an update on schools infrastructure. So they are the planned items on the agenda at the moment. And I will just take this opportunity just to say to members again, because we do have some new people here, that if ever you think there are any other topics that you feel that as Schools Forum related to finance for all the education settings and different support that's going on in Suffolk for children, that you feel that you would like to have a paper to help to explore and understand some topics more, then we're always open to having suggestions. The forward agenda for the year, as you can see on paper F, it is typically the same papers at the same times a year, but it's worth always remembering that as the education climate changes, that there may be times when it's worth us having a broader understanding of other things that are going on and how they relate to funding for children in Suffolk. So on that note, as I don't see any hands up or anybody looking like they want to ask anything else at 10:15, I will thank you all very much for your time, wish you a good rest of the day, and thank you all very much, and close the meeting. Thank you very much. See you in May.
Thanks, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.